As the world descends into chaos, a small group fights to uncover the truth behind a mysterious environmental disaster that is causing mass self-deletions. And you won't believe what's behind it all. We start out in a park. Two ladies are sitting and talking. One of them is seeing things, but the other cannot. Instead, she just takes out this sharp object from her hair and claps herself. What a way to start a movie. Next thing we see is these construction workers having a conversation together, and then a body lands from the sky not far from them. They go over to the guy and call an ambulance, but before they can even take that one in, more bodies start falling around them, from a few to tens to a rain of bodies. People are just jumping off the building en masse. This guy looks up to the sky and you can see the tears welling up in his eyes. It's a rough scene, but get it together, man. We now quickly cut to Philadelphia High School at 9:45 a.m. A man named Elliot Moore is talking to his students about honeybees vanishing without traces. He asks the kids for possible explanations and they just start throwing different theories in the air. All of them seem excited to be involved except this guy Jake. Elliot basically bullies him into talking and his theory ends up making sense. He says it's an act of nature which we'll never truly understand. Moments later, the vice principal comes in and takes Elliot out. There's an emergency staff meeting to announce to the teachers that Central Park has just been hit with some type of bio attack. Some type of airborne chemical toxin was released in and around the park, and the warning signs are confused speech, physical disorientation, and loss of direction before death. They instruct the teachers to dismiss the students, and they do that. This guy, Julian, a math teacher, now joins Elliot in his class, and he's talking about the happenings. He's confident nothing will happen in Philadelphia. Elliot and Julian are now leaving the school together, and it seems Elliot has some problems with the missus. Then we see the missus, Alma Moore. She's obviously worried about everything going on in New York. The news is basically saying the toxin going around can make you clap yourself. Elliot goes in to pack up quickly. In the room, he puts on his ring and he then sees a really brilliant newspaper headline which says, "Philadelphia, murder rate soaring. Creative." Meanwhile, Alma is acting suspicious. She sees a call from God knows who, and she immediately shuts it off and tries to act normal. She's failing at it. We now see Elliot and Alma join Julian and his daughter Jess at the train station. Julian says his wife will be coming on the next train. He then makes a comment that makes Alma think he knows about their fight. She's obviously not happy about that, so she calls her husband aside and asks him why he told his best friend about the fight. Well, duh, because he's his best friend. Anyway, Jess now uses that excuse to ask to sit on her own on the train, so she gets her ticket from Julian and moves ahead of them. Elliot quickly confronts his friend and they move on. We now cut to the Rittenhouse Park in Philadelphia at 11:31 a.m. Everything seems pretty normal until everyone starts doing the mannequin challenge. Remember that one? Then boom, a cop claps himself. A man comes out of his car, takes the cop's revolver, and self-deletes himself too. A woman standing by the road takes the gun and does the same thing, like that. In the train, we now see the real reason Alma wanted to sit separately from her husband, so she can finally answer that call she had been ignoring. She tells the guy that he's got to chill out. He's beginning to act like a Fatal Attraction guy now. Her word, not mine. But it seems the guy called for a different reason, to check on her because Philadelphia just got attacked. The news gets to Julian and Elliot and they start panicking. Julian immediately calls his wife, but he can't hear her, so he texts her. She says she's on a bus to New Jersey. Elliot immediately goes across to check on his wife, and he just stays with her. He's with her when the train makes an abrupt stop. They say the train service is being discontinued, and this place in the middle of nowhere will be the last stop for all passengers. Okay, not really in the middle of nowhere. They're in Filbert, Pennsylvania. The train crew says they lost contact with everyone, and that's why they stopped here. In simpler terms, they're stuck here. So this is like Lost, but with the train, I guess. Alma's trying to help Julian calm Jess down. The men and Jess now head to a restaurant while Alma heads to the bathroom. Julian leaves his daughter in Elliot's care to go get some milk. Elliot now gives her his ring, and is trying to make her laugh. It works. She has a really beautiful smile. But that very adorable moment is very quickly cut short by this woman beside Elliot, who shows him a video of this man offering himself up as lunch to these lions at the Philadelphia Zoo. At first, it's like the lions are like, "How come we're getting free lunch? What's the catch?" But they eventually just say, "What the hell?" and get to feasting. Moments later, they're all watching the news at the restaurant, and the reporter is saying that the authorities are saying that it's becoming less and less likely that this is some sort of an attack. They now show a map showing the areas being attacked, and guess what? Filbert is dead center, and they say it seems to be attacking small cities. Welp, as if on cue, the lights go off. A man now stands up and says if they stay here, they'll all be ripped in peace. Another man says whatever this is, it looks like it's not occurring 90 miles from here. Every single person in the restaurant is like, say no more. They pack their bags, head to their cars, and immediately start zooming off. Everybody zooms off, leaving Elliot and the gang. I thought the majority of the guys here arrived in a train. How come everyone has a car? Anyway, thankfully, some good Samaritan comes and offers Elliot and Alma a ride. They call Julian to come join them, but Julian says he has to head to Princeton because of his wife. He hasn't heard from her in 2 hours, so he has to go and look for her. There's a car headed to Princeton, so he's just going to join them and leave Jess with them. Julian says he'll just go to Princeton, get his wife, and come back and find them. Brother, I'm sure we know that's not going to happen. You, he, she, and I all know you're not coming back. Goodbye, bro. Julian joins the guys in the car while Elliot, Alma, and Jess join the other guys. They first stop by their house to pick up some stuff before they leave. At the house, the man says it's the plants that's causing the entire madness. So in that case, it's probably not a good sign that he has plants everywhere here, is it? Anyway, Julian and his people are now arriving at Princeton, and it's absolutely not a pleasant sight. There are bodies hanging everywhere. Safe to say the city was hit really badly. The lady at the back of the car is screaming, and Julian is trying to calm her down with a math riddle. And I kid you not, it actually works. Having seen the bodies, Julian tells him to close all the vents so they don't inhale the toxins. But as he's still dishing out riddles, he looks up and can see a hole in the roof of the car, and the look on his face is like he just knows they're finished. And indeed they are, because the guy just suddenly stops the car and then steps on the gas again and drives straight into a tree. Julian steps out of the car, sits in the middle of the road, takes a piece of glass from the floor, and just starts massaging himself with it. As that's going on, we cut to Elliot and the gang on their own journey. They see dead animals on the road quite a distance in front of them as they're going, and they immediately stop the car and get out to look through a pair of binoculars. When they look, they see it's actually human bodies, not animals. So they just turn 360 degrees and go the opposite way. They now get to a crossroads where they see a soldier who approaches them and tells them that where he's coming from, the people have also been affected by this thing. Shortly after, cars start approaching from the other two roads, and they talk to each of them to find out what's going on from those ends. Alma makes the mistake of opening her phone in front of Elliot, who sees a missed call from a Joey and asks her who that is. Of course, she says it's no one. At least she didn't say he's just a friend, because when you hear Joey, friends, and an attractive lady, it can only mean one thing, if you get what I mean. If you don't catch my drift, please just go and watch Friends. Anyway, Elliot doesn't think much about it, because he's much more occupied with the thought of not being able to get Julian on the phone. The soldier and the lady come back with news. All the cars have the same news. Some miles from where they're coming, they saw bodies. So they all figure they'll just stay here then. The guy driving Elliot and the gang now comes and tells them that there's someone talking to her daughter in Princeton, and they quickly run to her to hear news from that end. The woman is panicking and trying to calm her daughter down, but her daughter is gone. She first tells them that everyone outside is dead, and soon, she just starts repeating the word, calculus, before we finally hear a crash. The woman is broken. Math class did the same to me. Jess now walks up to Elliot where he's seated on the ground and whispers something to him. Then Elliot pulls her close and they cry together. Alma's watching from a distance and crying too. After some time, they manage to put Jess to sleep while the adults are strategizing. Elliot and the soldier are actually the ones strategizing. The driver guy is just going on with his conspiracy theories about plants, while Alma and his wife listen. The soldier now addresses everyone else. He says the thing is attacking populations, so they need to head to where there aren't many people, where people don't travel, a place where no one would want to go. Ohio. Just kidding. There's a Mr. Collins here who's a realtor in this area. He tells them to go west, through dirt roads, to a town where there's no significant population. They now divide themselves into two groups. The first group is being led by Elliot and his family. As they're walking, Alma tells her husband the truth about the Joey guy. She went out and had dessert with him one night, but that night, she told her husband she'd be working late. She says she's telling him now because she feels like she's going to die and she doesn't want to carry that guilt with her to the grave. What a motivation. Elliot doesn't like that she lied to him though. The soldier and the other group are now coming through, and our conspiracy theory guy might be right because the leaves and grasses start rustling, and all of a sudden, the soldier takes out his rifle and claps himself. Then we see Elliot and his group reacting to the multiple gunshots they're now hearing. Elliot is trying to think of what to do, but his wife and these other guys won't let him think. Please shut up. Let the man think. He finally figures it out. Our conspiracy theorist was actually not a conspiracy theorist. He was right all along. It was the plants. The plants are targeting large groups of people and making them clap themselves. So he tells a small group to split into even smaller groups. They break into 3 groups and try to run faster than the onrushing wind, but the wind eventually catches up with them. It blows so hard, so they just stand there thinking that their world is over, but the wind stops and nothing happens. If only they had listened to that guy from the beginning. Crazy that he's not alive to see that he was right. Elliot and his group start running. Then they see a truck ahead and Elliot goes to check it out. It's all clear, so he calls the rest of the group and they go to a house nearby together. In the house, Elliot is trying to figure things out. He brings out a map and he has figured out where they'll go next, but Alma and Jess have to use the bathroom first. After they leave the bathroom, Elliot notices the plant in the house and he goes to have a word with it. He's being so kind and cautious to the plant and can't stop himself, even after he finds out it's only a plastic plant. Everything in this house is fake, by the way. Alma and Jess finally come out of the bathroom, so they all leave. When they get far enough from the house, they notice 2 groups running towards the house, and it's not long at all before they start clapping themselves. Elliot and his group run again. They get to a farm where they see a radio which is transmitting an emergency broadcast. The reporter is trying to say unaffected people should report to the nearest police station or something, but they can't really hear because the signal's not so good. Okay, wait a minute. I just want to know, how come things like this never affect reporters and newscasters? How come they always have immunity? I'm just thinking here. But back to the movie, and Elliot now has a confession too. He says he once tried to hit on a hot pharmacist one time, but this guy is so faithful that his wife can immediately tell that it's a lie. They now get to a house. Jess is playing on the swing outside while Elliot and the boys go to check out the house. Someone is inside, so they ask for food for Jess, but the man is not willing to take the risk of opening the door for them. The little boys get mad that the man is shutting them out, so they start yelling and banging on the door. That doesn't end well. Whoever is inside shoots both boys. Crazy, man. We're now down to Elliot, Alma, and Jess. They run away and break down on the field. Over at Petersburg, West Virginia, 2 old people are wearing masks to protect themselves from whatever is in the air while they knit and watch the news. The old people are always the most prepared. The professor on TV predicts that the event should be at its most sensitive tomorrow morning. We see different people in different cities watching the news. There are a few military men in Fairfield, Nebraska, who seem to be getting strapped up. You want to go out and shoot the plants or what? Elliot and Alma get to another house, and Elliot goes to check it out. He sees an old woman outside who invites them in for supper. At the table, they make small talk. From the conversation, they find out that this woman is shut out from the world, and has been for years. Alma tries to tell her what's going on in the world, and the woman stops her. She says the world doesn't care about her, so she doesn't care about the world too. She lets them spend the night at her place though. Alma's a little spooked by the woman, and to be honest, she has a reason to be. Because why did this woman women just randomly come out and say she heard them whispering and plotting to murder her in her sleep. She literally just says that and goes back into her room. So weird. Surprisingly, nothing happens all night. Elliot wakes up the next morning and has to walk around the house to find Alma and Jess. He hasn't found any of them yet. What he finds is his doll lying on the bed, the type you see in horror movies. Then the woman shows up and accuses Elliot of trying to steal her things. She's so paranoid. She says they have to leave her house ASAP. She immediately goes out to her garden and starts praying. Elliot goes out to try and talk to her. Then boom, a strong wind starts blowing. The trees start rustling, and Elliot immediately rushes into the house and shuts the door. The woman then comes around the house and repeatedly hits her head on the wall and the windows. That thing has gotten her too. He enters into a room to run away from all that, and that's when he hears Alma and Jess's voices laughing and playing. They're in the other house, but they can hear each other very clearly because of this very unique sound system this woman installed in her house years ago. He tells them to shut the doors and windows because the old woman just got clapped. They immediately do that and crouch at one corner while the leaves and grass rustle outside. Remember what the professor said on the TV yesterday? This thing is likely to be at its most sensitive in the morning. I guess that's what's happening here. Alma and Elliot are now sharing nostalgic stories from when they just met, and they're getting emotional. So emotional that Elliot says if they're going to die, he wants to be with her. So he opens the door and steps outside. You would have expected that at least one of them would remain inside, but Alma and Jess also come out. Oh my goodness, why do lovebirds never use their brains? But it seems these leaves understand the language of love because they don't harm the lovebirds. Alma and Elliot hold each other's hands and go back into the house in one piece. 3 months later, we see Alma preparing Jess for her first day of school. Alma makes sure to put a framed photo of Jess's parents in her bag, and Jess just looks at Alma and tells her she loves her. Elliot then goes to drop Alma off at the bus. Back home, the professor's talking about the neurotoxin on the news, and when he was asked to explain the happenings, he just quotes Jake, the great philosopher from Elliot's class. He says this was an act of nature and will never fully understand it. Lame. Anyway, he also says this is probably a warning, a prelude for something bigger to come. Foreshadowing moment. Kinda came true, didn't it? By the way, Alma just took a test. She's pregnant. It's probably another man's. She's so excited that she waits for Elliot in front of the house to tell him the good news. Anyway, we end this movie just as we started it. In a park, 2 friends walking, and all of a sudden, the mannequin challenge. But from the language they're speaking, the plants have taken the happening to another country. Moral of the story? What the plants doing?